I call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Public Works this Tuesday, August 15th of 2023. First, we have messages from board members. Do we have any messages from the board? Okay, seeing none. Next is petitions and remonstrances. If we have anyone who would like to make a public comment about something that is not on the agenda, now is the opportunity to do so. Again, if you're on Zoom and would like to make a public comment on something not on the agenda, you're welcome to add something in the chat or use the raised hand function so that we can acknowledge you. If you're in person, you are welcome to approach the microphone. Seeing none. Next, we have Title VI abatements. First is abatement at 1520 West Woodruff Lane.
Hi, I'm Chastina Hayes from the Hand Department. And this address, we actually issued a citation on 7/18/23, 7/25/23, and 8/3/23 for the overgrowth and trash, sorry. And then I also added pictures again today to kind of make it a little bit easier.
I can also share those on the screen if you like.
Okay.
But she printed them off as well. I see them in our packet as well. They're in the packet.
Yeah, pass those down again. And we discussed this during the work session. You have not received any response from
No. Now, I have posted the citations at the property, and they have taken them down, but I have not heard anything from the owner.
Okay. Are there questions from the board on this item? Are there any public comments on this item? Again, if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat function or the raised hand function.
I see nothing on Zoom.
Okay. Seeing none. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the abatement at 1520 West Woodruff Lane.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd? Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is abatement at 2225 South High Street.
And that is also me. So I initially done a citation on 7/18/23, 7/25/23, and 8/3/23, basically the same days. And I spoke with the owner the first day, and I don't know the whole backstory. I just know this one's the one that he blames the city for work that they have done, but he basically told me he's not going to mow it.
Thank you. Do we have questions on this item?
Have you had any communication with the owner directly since that first time you spoke to him?
No, I have not.
Have you tried and he has not been responsive?
I just posted and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll just real quick comment that, yes, the board's aware of a history with this property. There was some dispute in the past about a water line project. We've met on site with the owner on multiple occasions, addressed those issues last year. What was brought to our attention, there were a few things that were brought to our attention that were remedied at that time, but this is just a complete refusal to mow the property at this point.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item? If you're on Zoom, you can use the chat function or the raised hand function.
The homeowner is on.
Okay. If the property owner or tenant wants to make comments, now is an opportunity.
Mr. Adam, would you like to make any comment on this at this time?
I'm not receiving a response.
Hello?
Would you like to make any comment at this time?
Sure.
Okay.
Once again, I agree in full. The property does need to be abated, especially before CBU fills in the trench that they dug in my yard. The abatement last year was first done July 22nd by Trevor Yoho of Yoho Lawn and Order. And the front of the property was successfully abated using a continuous track Kubota. Continuous track means like a tank with a front end bush hog, capable of going through a sapling of up to 2 inches in diameter. When I talked to Mr. Yoho after the job was done, I asked him why it took an $80,000 piece of equipment to cut my grass. And he told me that it's not mowable with a Skag, a Hustler, or a Dixie chopper, because there's a 2.5 foot deep trench in my yard, which was created by CBU. This began in 2021. Prior to that, I had never had any type of citation for anything in the city, especially the appearance of the property. You guys know this. You've been contacted. The mayor has been contacted. CBU's been contacted. Once my yard is in a mowable state, i.e. when the trench is filled, I will be delighted to mow it. I love mowing grass. I have a 6-foot Hustler, 6-foot deck Hustler. I am fine. I enjoy mowing grass. But until that time, no, I'm not going to mow it.
Thank you. Are there any? Did you have more?
No, I said you're quite welcome.
Okay, thank you. Did the board have any remaining questions on this item?
I'm curious what CBU staff how CBU staff have been involved in this.
They were on site. They made repairs at the time. Is Roy here? No. On several occasions, CBU staff and city engineering staff met on site last summer as part of this process. At the time, CBU had assured and has assured that everything was repaired to the standard that they needed to.
So staff has been in touch with CBU this
No,
summer?
not this time around, no.
No, okay.
But that last year, I mean, they had signed off on several occasions that their work was complete in the area. And then, I mean, we were on site. They showed where they had made, put their trench and the repairs that they had made.
Adam, can you speak to where on the property the trench was located?
It's towards at the time there was dirt and grass and seed. And Mr. Adams, please chime in here if I say anything incorrect, but I believe it was to the south of the driveway.
But there's nothing in that trench that would prevent other areas of the lawn from being
Absolutely
mowed?
not.
Any other questions? All right. Any other public comment?
I see nothing additional on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the abatement at 2225 South High Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have approval of minutes for July 3rd of 2023. Resolution 2023-48, renew mobile vendor Kona Ice Truck number 1. Resolution 2023-49, renew mobile vendor Kona Ice Truck number 2. Resolution 2023-50, renew mobile vendor Kona Ice Truck number 3. Resolution 2023-51, Best Beers, Inc., Clydesdale on Kirkwood event. Resolution 2023-52, Russian Recordings 20th anniversary. Resolution 2023-53, Paint the Town Purple. Change order number 1 for the Hopewell Phase 1 East project. lane closure request from Milestone Contractors for Hopewell Phase 1 East, Morton from 1st to 2nd, and approval of payroll. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda from tonight's meeting for August 15th, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. Next is new business. First, under new business is Resolution 2023-55, Public Works Facilities Suspension Policy.
Part 2 of the packet. Sorry, was navigating through the 3 parts of the gigantic packet today. Again, Adam Wason, Public Works Director for the City of Bloomington. So the Board of Public Works has the power and responsibility to ask a person to leave or remove a person from property owned, managed, or operated by the Board of Public Works or the Public Works Department. Similarly, the board has the power and responsibility to suspend a person from use or entrance of publicly owned property, managed, or operated by the board. The board will afford suspended individuals notice, appeal, and hearing, and a suspension shall range from 7 days to a year. So we're asking for your support in passing Resolution 2023-55. This all comes from situations in which we've had individuals on Public Works property either causing criminal damage or vandalism in different ways, and need to have a policy on the books that we do have a suspension policy. So this is mirrored a lot after what Parks and Rec has for suspension from parks facilities for violations of parks policies. This would come into play when, when we have situations of repeated disorderly conduct, repeated vandalism, other types of criminal mischief type activities. Some examples of late are damage to fire panels in a parking garage, damage to elevators in parking garages, possibly like a refusal to leave City Hall after repeated requests for, different types of behaviors that wouldn't be acceptable. So this all just allows I, as a Public Works Director, to issue these suspensions as needed with, obviously, in coordination with City Legal and possibly the Police Department if it rose to that level. But this does put a policy on the books that gives us that ability. Happy to answer any questions with my friends from City Legal.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Any public comments on this item? Again, if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat function or the raised hand function to let us know you'd like to make a comment.
I see nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve Resolution 2023-55, Public Works Facility Suspension Policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have Resolution 2023-56, Proposed Right-of-Way Obstruction Ordinance.
Again, Adam Wason, Public Works Director. So from the staff report, it states that the city has a responsibility to ensure that the public's right-of-way is accessible and available to all members of the Bloomington community. To that end, the city recommends taking steps to prevent individuals and entities from impermissibly obstructing the public right-of-way. Staff requests that the board adopt this resolution as a recommendation to the City Council to adopt proposed ordinance changes to the city code that would address these obstructions to the right-of-way. I just want to first start with some general comments from myself and state that I just appreciate each of the board members, their diligence in reviewing this matter, their diligence in the conversation yesterday during the work session on this matter. This is being brought forward and for reasons that, none of us would really want to have to bring forward resolutions like this. We've had some specific instances of late and over the last, we've had one specific instance of late where this really kind of came to a recognition of city staff that we needed to come up with a way to address a situation that is both within that meets the legal requirements of issuing trespass orders for blocking public rights of way, but also does so with coordination of the city legal department, the prosecutor's office, the police department, and others. So what's before you today is somewhat modeled after what Indianapolis has created to address situations where individuals are blocking public rights of way, mainly sidewalks or areas where pedestrians are going to travel. But so the specific instance that we encountered was a few individuals on a city street that were blocking 90% of the public right-of-way. There was no way that that public right-of-way at that point in time was ADA accessible. There was no way it was passable by somebody simply walking by. In the vast majority of the instances in which I've been in a situation encountering that, it's simply a conversation of, hey, we want to try to keep the sidewalk clear. Could you please, gather your things? And that's usually all it is. We've had an instance where that was pushed to, no, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here. This is, and we, in conversation with our police department, which we work very good with, and not anything against their actions in the situation, but it was very clear in their conversations with the prosecutor's office and others that we didn't really have the ability to simply remove for trespass for this exact issue. The result of that is what's before you today. We're trying to come up with what we're asking is that you would pass this resolution, which then recommends to the city council to take up an ordinance that would give us the ability to handle situations of this nature. So, again, I want to thank you for the conversation yesterday. It really helped us kind of reshape and think about some of the other possible interpretations of how this could be read, with how we have many parts of our code that address the use of or improper use of the public's right-of-way. As we've discussed, we think at least 5 chapters of city code address the right-of-way. Title 4, Title 6, Title 12, Title 15, Title 20, all address the right-of-way in different ways. Title 6 is encroachments to the right-of-way of vegetation and overgrowth. Title 15 would be a car blocking a sidewalk. Title 20 has to do with signs in the right-of-way. There's a lot of different. Title 12, which you folks see often, is the excavation of the right-of-way and how contractors and developers use the right-of-way. So while there are a lot of different parts of the code that address specific uses of the right-of-way in different ways, we needed something on our books to help us in those situations that we've encountered of late. So with all that said, I will also, again, rely on our friends from City Legal to help answer any questions you have, but I appreciate the robust discussion. A few things that have come from that discussion. We've already agreed to change the fine structure from the general city code listed fine structure for improper use of the right-of-way. Yesterday we were discussing about how it had language of up to $2,500. That's some general language from city code on how fine structures are levied, and we've agreed to modify that and are open to further discussion on that one. We've also did the entities. Language on, we've been discussing language in the resolution about entities versus individuals, and I'd ask Mike to address that in his comments as he comes up, but the robust discussion led to where it should have, hopefully a better product for everyone. So with that, any questions from the board?
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item?
I also just want to say I appreciate the discussion and the back and forth between staff and the board and some of the changes that were made. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I too appreciate the conversation that we've had around this particular issue. As the public knows, anyone who has watched Public Works or has interacted with us, we deal with many, many, many issues related to the right-of-way. This board takes very seriously the accessibility of the right-of-way and are very mindful when we do grant use of the right-of-way for specific purposes. Of course, allowing the public to be able to use the right-of-way in the way that it is intended so that people can pass through it and travel through it is something that's top of mind every time we have a conversation about right-of-way use, whether it's construction or a special event. This board often asks and ensures that the public is still going to be able to access what they need in order to be able to travel through the area. And so it is important to us, and this is one element of that we are considering today and thinking about that has perhaps not been addressed by other elements of the code. In that conversation about the way that the proposal is written, the suggested language, I had raised the question about the wording that included entities, because we do actually address usage of the right-of-way by entities in many, many different ways. And so it seemed that this particular ordinance would not necessarily be addressing entities because we do have other code language that addresses entities in this scenario. So I would recommend that we modify the suggested language to remove the term entities so that it reads individuals as opposed to individuals and entities. Likewise, I appreciate we had a really good conversation about the fines and the fact that there is sort of a general violation fine language that exists in city code that was used in this proposed language, but it seemed incongruent when read as its general fine language to some other fines that we place upon different entities in most cases for violating use of the public right-of-way. And so, and it's, to me, does not seem like the fine is actually the critical element of this proposed ordinance. And so I would suggest that we might modify this language to not include reference to a fine, as that is not part of the goal. But would be happy to hear more from City Legal on those proposed changes and anything else that we might not have addressed in this discussion.
The exact modifications that you're proposing correct so that we all know what we're talking about. I think you're talking about in subpart B of the ordinance, the first three words are individuals or entities, and that you would want to strike through the words or and entities there. Mm-hmm. And then I think if we track down to the bottom, the final sentence in that subsection, I think what you're suggesting is that we would eliminate, I guess we would eliminate the words are subject to a fine of $30 and so it would read instead, individuals who fail or refuse to move an obstruction in the right-of-way after being required to do so are considered to be trespassing. Mm-hmm. Do I have that right?
That is correct. And there is another reference to entities, or entity, I should say, under item C, individual or entity, and so that I would propose that we remove the reference to entity there.
Okay. I can tell you from staff's perspective at least, none of those changes are objectionable. Those are all reasonable. Did you have additional questions or
other
thoughts?
questions or other comments?
Can I ask you to speak to the reason to include or not include mention of the fine specifically? What legal and staff's opinion is about that, please.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this at the work session. This is not a revenue-generating initiative for the city. The goal here for staff, and I hope for the board, is to make sure that the public right-of-way is usable by the public for its intended purpose. And so the goal is to make sure we have a tool when we have situations where the right-of-way has been obstructed so it can't be used for its intended purpose, to make sure that we can get it back into the state that we need it to be in so that it can be used for the public to traverse. In that regard, a fine really is not a useful tool at all. What we need to be able to do is have a mechanism to remove the obstruction that's in the right-of-way, and that's what we're trying to do with this proposed ordinance.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And just to clarify, when we say the word obstruction, we mean items. Like, we're talking about things like, temporary structural items, belongings, things that are occupying the space when we use the word obstruction. So a person, sitting on a bench or, existing in the right-of-way, certainly perfectly fine. But it's when the right-of-way is obstructed by material items that are not allowing for the public to use it.
I'm not sure if you're asking a question or not, but if you are, yes, absolutely. This is not a loitering statute. It's about, ordinance. It's about obstructions, physical obstructions in the right-of-way.
Any other questions? Okay. Any public comments on this item? Yes, you're welcome to approach the microphone. And if you will state your name for the record, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam President. Eric Spoonmore, Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to thank the board and staff for its consideration of this item tonight. This has been something that our members have been concerned about for quite a while, and we have 870 members roughly in the Chamber of Commerce, about 80% of which are small, local-owned businesses, a lot of the businesses that we all know and love that make Bloomington such a wonderful, compassionate, caring place. And what we see is that this is a matter of equity, and it's a matter of accessibility, and we want Bloomington to be as accessible as possible. And so we give our full-throated support to this proposal and this measure. I think it very clearly states the objectives, and all of which we agree with, and appreciate Mr. Wason's remarks and City Legal's remarks to kind of clarify some of that. If there's any way that it could be enhanced, I would look at the 4 criterion that are outlined under subsection A of obstructing the right-of-way. To me, in reading it, it's not 100% clear if this is all 4 of those criterion have to be met, or if just one of them or any of them need to be met. So I would encourage the board to add some additional clarity in there to say that if any one of these criterion are met, then that would be a violation of obstructing the right-of-way. So just my thoughts, and wanted to bring that to your attention. But again, thank you so much for considering this. The Chamber supports this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just add the comment that, which I don't know, it was offered in your staff context, I think, as well, but appreciate that note about the language. This, of course, is a resolution that we would be sending to City Council as recommendation, and they will continue to potentially refine and adjust as needed. But appreciate that comment as well.
the 4 criteria. And Mr. Rooker, please help me if I don't say this right, but I believe the language with the if/or language does mean that it could be any of the 4. It doesn't need to be a combination of the 4. If more than half of the width is blocked at any point, if the normal flow of traffic or normal flow of pedestrians or vehicles is disrupted, if pedestrians are compelled to step out onto the street or otherwise expose themselves to danger in order to pass around the blockage, or it is rendered inaccessible to those protected by the ADA. So I think that if/or scenario allows for it to be one of them.
Thank you.
Michael Rooker, City Attorney. I think I forgot to introduce myself earlier. My apologies. But yeah, just to confirm that, the disjunctive at the end of that list of 4 items indicates that any one of the 4 would qualify. Again, if it's helpful, you can use some additional language at the top of it to say if any of the following criteria and then do the list. There's any number of ways to be clear about that. So,
Thank you.
I knew he'd use a bigger word than I would.
All right, we have another public comment, I believe. If you'll just introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Sydney Zulik. I just want to start off by thanking you all for your work, but I discourage you passing this on to the City Council in the current form that it is. Homeless people have stuff. We all have stuff. But the only difference between them and people who do have homes or apartments or rent anything is that they don't have a place to put their stuff. So instead of demonizing them for having stuff like the rest of us do, I really encourage you to look for solutions that give them a place to put their stuff instead of just kind of taking it. I understand that this is an issue. I'm the only city council candidate for District 6, so in 3.5 months I will be forced to reckon with this issue like the rest of you are. I totally get it. But I really think we should be focused on legislation that helps instead of hurts. And in 3.5 months, I would love to work with you all and develop a solution that is maybe a little more helpful and a little less hurtful. So if you do choose, I'm so sorry, I keep hitting this. If you do choose to pass this ordinance, I encourage you to include wording that opens up opportunity to create spaces for homeless people to put their stuff, like, for example, lockers, where they know that their stuff will be safe. The Shalom Center has some options, but not as many people are aware of them. I really believe that if we are to pass something like this, we should be offering services as a city for people to keep their stuff safe. And also, in regard to obstructing the way, we should really be looking a lot more at double parking. If you've driven down Walnut or College in the past 3 days, you know it's a huge safety issue for traffic. I drive there all the time. I used to live on the square, so I'm quite familiar with it. We should be focusing a little bit more on that and a little less on demonizing homelessness. Thank you. And once again, I really appreciate all of your hard work.
Are we going to Zoom or? Oh, okay. Good evening. Dave Askins with the B Square Bulletin. I just had a couple of procedural questions. As I understand it, this resolution, if it were to be passed, would be conveyed to the City Council as some kind of a communication. And at that point, you know, a City Council member could decide that they want to take that ordinance and champion it and sponsor it to move forward through the City Council's first and second reading process. But the administration often also just asks the council on its own initiative to put things in front of the City Council. So I guess my question is, what's the plan? Is it the hope and expectation that a City Council member will recognize that this is something that they should work on and sponsor it, or will the administration itself ask the City Council to enact this ordinance? And if it's the administration, I guess it's fair to ask what the timetable would be. For the other scenario, predicting the actions of the City Council, you know, that's not an exact science. But predicting the actions of the administration, that's a fairer question. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have any staff representation who has?
I would just say that that will be determined between conversations of the administration and the council leadership on how that would move forward, the timing of it. This is just a first step, asking the council to consider ordinance language, so that would be the intent there. And I'll also just take a moment to address the previous commenters, a few of the previous commenters' comments. By no means is this any intent to demonize homelessness, as was suggested. This is to keep public rights-of-way free and clear for those traveling. The instances that were specifically spoken about tonight and in past that has really brought this to the table as a conversation were sidewalks that were completely inaccessible to anyone walking, using a wheelchair, or any type of travel on that sidewalk. This isn't about demonizing homelessness. This is about us trying to keep public rights of way clear. The suggestions of, offering more services or offering lockers, very, absolutely legitimate suggestions. We're a community that offers a lot of services where city government supports them. But the notion that this is just intended to demonize homelessness is just not the case.
Thank you. Other public comments? And if you're on Zoom and you would like to make a comment, you can use the chat function or the raised hand function to let us know.
I see nothing on Zoom.
All right. Any other comments, final comments from the board?
I just want to say I appreciate the way that this ordinance has been written, specifically because it doesn't prevent people from having possessions in the public, around the public right-of-way, near the public right-of-way, as long as they're not obstructing the public right-of-way. And I do recognize that people have things and they need to have a place to put things. And this basically says, just not so that you're blocking other people's ability to walk through the thoroughfare. And for that reason, I support the way that this has been written and will make the recommendation.
Thank you.
For me as well, this is really strongly an ADA support for our community, so I also will be supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. All right. If we have no other public comment that has come in, do we have a motion on this item?
Do I need to change the motion considering the suggested language change?
I think as amended.
As amended is
Okay.
It was clearly, I think the language that was going to be amended and was confirmed by City Attorney Rooker with President Deckard is acceptable. So I think you could make the motion with the language as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I move that we approve Resolution 2023-56, proposed right-of-way obstruction ordinance as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have scooter license application for Bird Rides, Inc.
All right. Let me take a moment to gather myself in this 500-page packet.
Fortunately, it is in the same, I think, same packet.
April's too good to me. She's handed me printed copies, so I don't have to scroll anymore. Adam Wason, again, Public Works Director for the City of Bloomington. We have Hank Duncan, our Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator from the Planning and Transportation Department here as well tonight, as well as City Legal and some representatives of the various scooter companies. So I'll just start off with some general comments about scooters in general, and then we'll take up each of the individual license applications from the board. Again, another topic that has gained robust discussion, and I want to thank the board for their participation in those discussions. It's, I think, going to lead to a better final product in the end for everyone. And just want to make a few notes about why we're at the point we are and what we're asking of the board. So for the last, several months and probably year plus, there's been a lot of discussions about how scooters are operated in Bloomington, how they are, where they're parked, and just the general usage of scooters within the community and shared mobility devices, including sit-down scooters and e-bikes, shared e-bikes and such. Part of it has to do with how they are stored in the public right-of-way. So again, as we all know, that's a big topic of discussion. with our last item. So it's not only how they're stored in the public right-of-way, but how they're used within the public right-of-way and the safety of those devices for the end users. A lot of the conversation that we've been having has been the result of conversations we've been having with the city council on what they would like, on the expectations they have and how we better manage the scooter fleets throughout the community. So currently we have 3 operators, VO, Bird, and Lime, that are operating with their shared mobility devices within the community. The conversations with City Council has led staff to take certain steps to work with the scooter companies and also improve the infrastructure for scooters within the community. And then with these applications and with the program going forward, allowing us, not allowing us, but having staff put forward a commitment that we will work in a more robust way on enforcement of the parking, improper parking of scooters throughout the community. So some of the things that we've done since our last conversations with the City Council and since the last time we met and talked about the actual application itself with the board, we have worked to install, I think as of today, we're at 60 corrals, parking corrals throughout the geographic area that includes 3rd Street to the south, 12th Street to the north, Morton Street right out front of City Hall here to the west, and Indiana Avenue adjacent to the Sample Gates to the east near campus. So in that geographic area, we've installed 60 corrals that have, they range from having just white reflective delineators to delineators and parking, black rubber parking blocks, and then stenciled paint on the ground that indicates scooter parking zones. Those have all been geofenced within a mapping device on computers that will populate within the apps to inform the users of the scooters for all 3 of the companies that if they are starting and stopping a ride within that geographic area, they need to be parked in and around those corrals. They're not accurate to 100%. It sounds like they're anywhere from 10 to 20 feet accurate within that area, but so that those rides would have to stop and start within using one of those corrals. So that is one of our attempts to hopefully improve the blockage of the public rights of way of these scooters and micro-mobility devices. Additionally, we've been working very closely with the companies. We sent them a set of questions yesterday, and I'll ask that the companies kind of address those individually, but on how they can be accountable to the community and the city and the board when their scooters are, when these micro-mobility devices are improperly parked. Who their local contacts are, how we can work together. One of the big comments from the board yesterday that's hit home to me is, why haven't we kept the scooter companies more accountable throughout these last few years? And I think the answer to that is one of a matter of resources and dedicated resources, but it's also a matter of, and I don't, I say this with a little reservation, but it's been a lack of city staff having all of the abilities and foresight on how to really try to manage these things. It was an emerging technology, and it was one when you have the 80 other things of the day, and we didn't do a good enough job over the last couple of years of making sure we were keeping our right-of-ways accessible from blocked micromobility devices, et cetera. So again, we'll be asking for your support of these license applications with these new approaches to how we're going to hopefully work better with all of the scooter companies, micromobility device companies. I'm sorry, I need to use that micromobility term, but so we're hopeful that these changes and these updates will just improve the overall situation with the scooters throughout the community. Outside of that geographic area, what we're committing to, well, actually inside that geographic area and then outside of it as well, we've been working with the administration as part of our 2024 budget request to add additional resources within the parking enforcement area of our parking services division. We've gotten a commitment that will go forward in our 2024 budget request. And with that, we will then be able to ask the entire staff to address improperly parked scooters in the areas of the community in which they're doing their normal course of job duties. So we're trying to take some proactive steps that will hopefully just improve this throughout the community. And overall, I'll turn it over to Hank if Hank wants to offer anything else at this point in time. And this would be the, was this the renewal application for Burt? Which one was this one? I'm sorry. Which was first?
First is Bird.
For Bird. Okay. Do we have a representative of Bird on the meeting online?
Don't know their names.
No. So, for those attending online, do we have a representative from Bird Scooter Company?
Yeah, I saw him.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. All right. So, Hank, do you have anything else you want to offer at this time? Did I cover it all? Okay. Hank's shaking his head from the back. So, would the representative of Bird like to offer any comments at this time?
Hello, thank you. Thank you. This is Vaughn Rowland, Senior Manager of Government Partnerships with Bird, representing the Midwest. Really just want to thank the city and thank staff for really, doing a lot of the work, right? And really expecting us to raise the bar with regards to safety and with regards to just the overall product that's being brought to Bloomington. So just to sort of hit some of those questions that were asked of us yesterday, I was also on that study session yesterday, which was extremely beneficial, and I think a lot of good information was passed along there. But just to sort of walk through a few of those questions. In terms of what we're doing to improve safety, I say, we're doing all types of things. One, we're doing things on the tech side. So if a lot of the issues have to do with, public right-of-way riding and things of that nature, we're working on technology and have technology now to deter individuals from riding on sidewalks and being within ADA compliant areas. So that's something that we take extremely serious. It's not anything that's, unique just to Bloomington, right? We see these in pretty much every major city that we're in. We're constantly trying to establish relationships with the ADA community to figure out the best way to navigate and finding solutions there. I would also add that on that tech side of things that we're doing, we have things like Safe Start that allows for individuals that to have to take a small quiz actually before even being able to use our apps and go in and say, all right, what do you know? Are you familiar with the local rules and regs of riding in this area? Are you able to pass a small cognitive test to deter individuals who may be inebriated? Also, we have things like selfies, helmet selfies, to ensure that individuals are encouraging individuals to use helmets. So there's a myriad of things that we're doing, but I always like to say that starting with education and community engagement is probably our #1 effort. So I'll be in town myself this Friday on the campus of Illinois University for their Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll event, which is promoting public safety and public health. So I'll be there. It's a table expo event. I believe I'll have a small amount of time also to expand on some of the, how to ride, safety features that we're working on, and maybe be able to have some time to really talk through how we are approaching the rules and regs and of Bloomington. So those are things that are extremely important to us. Like I said, I'll be there on Friday, this coming Friday, on the campus for that event. We're expecting to have more events, particularly when it comes to, areas that are high traffic. So you'll see us more at some of the upcoming football games. You'll see us maybe at some table league events during the basketball season, as we know that, that probably won't be scooter riding season, but we still want to use that time to be able to engage the demographics and be able to educate individuals on, one, the local rules, and also just safety ways and safety mechanisms. We'll also be passing out a few different promo codes and things of that nature too for some new students that are on campus to take advantage, because equity is another extremely important piece for us to ensure that everybody has access to our service. So I'd also add, a question came up around things that we're doing to, properly ensure individuals, riders are parked correctly. So as of today, all of the new zones that Hank and staff have provided us are all in play. So they're all live. So I believe it's 60 plus parking, mandatory parking areas within that downtown and some of the outskirts of downtown as well. So that's all live right now. So we're extremely excited about that. And thank you again for the partnership from the city on that. But also, we do have a fining structure. So particularly for improper parking, we have a fining structure for unsafe riding, and we also have a fining structure for illegal and unsafe behavior on our vehicles. But it's typically a tiered system. So one offense will typically be X amount of dollars. Second offense will be a higher amount of dollars within that improper parking. Third offense, even higher, and then you can obviously move towards an area where your account is terminated. And that's just not terminated for your one cell phone, if you will. That's across different IP addresses, so you wouldn't be able to just go pick up another phone and try to access your account from there. So those are things that we're doing in terms of fines. And again, we have in-app messaging to sort of educate our riders around what safe riding looks like and what the rules of the road are within that particular market. So I definitely wanted to ensure that was addressed. Additionally, we love to come in town. I'm based in Chicago, so I'm not far at all. We'd love to come in along with our local operations team to meet and kind of talk through some of the strategy for this new application. And I know that was a request as well, to be able to meet with our local operations team. So that's something we would 100% like to do and just sort of get a better idea, because I know a lot of these locations are new, or the strategy is somewhat new in terms of that mandatory parking. So it would be great for us to be able to come in along with our local operations contacts and team to sort of just walk through what the corrals look like, the management, and just the overall logistics. So we are 100% open to that at Bird, and we'll look for Hank's leadership on scheduling that. Lastly, I would say in terms of how quickly we're responding to improperly parked vehicles, we have lately we've issued a new technology that's focused on our response times to 311 ticketing. So that's basically when a vehicle is reported as improperly parked within the market within Bloomington, and then our local FM team, our local operations teams receive automatic pings as to where those vehicles are. So that allows our local operations team to respond quicker, as opposed to just sort of waiting to hear from a city representative or waiting to hear from Hank and his team as to them receiving photos or receiving complaints from local constituents about what they're seeing. So that allows us to be more proactive and respond in a matter of time that is much quicker, and to be able to rebalance and fix the issue. So open to any other additional questions. Again, I'd like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank Hank and his staff and the rest of the board for allowing us to speak on this matter, and looking forward to further partnership with the city of Bloomington.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
A couple comments, if I may, that
Sure.
I forgot to add in my initial comments. One of the things we're also doing is asking for, of all of the companies, is to really hone in on who their local contacts are. Next week, we are really going to try to schedule time where we can meet with all the companies in the downtown, discuss some of the issues, some of the things we could foresee with some of the parking corrals and things, and really try to work together amongst all the companies. So that's one of them. The other thing is that, we're going to be closely monitoring the behavior of the companies and their users. We've got, the way the enforcement works is it's the same as parking. It's the same software we use for parking enforcement for vehicles. It's called T2. It's a system. So we're going to be able to, we've got good data already on our pilot project of looking at scooter parking violations since last fall. But with that data, we're going to be able to see which companies are being very responsive, which companies are having higher levels of violations, things like that, and trying to really work on it through that angle as well. It's possible that there's a day that we come back, next year or in the foreseeable future, where we change the way we want to do scooters or micro-mobility devices in Bloomington. It could be that we would move to more of an RFP process. We've seen some of our other kind of college-driven metro areas, they've moved to an RFP process where they have anyone that wants to enter into a competitive process to provide these services in a community, that it could just be one vendor in the future. So, there's a lot of moving parts into the future with this, but we'll certainly be collecting data. We'll certainly be issuing fines when we're finding the improperly parked scooters. We've got the ability within this, within the ordinance and within these applications and agreements to do that. And with additional resources, we'll be doing a better job of that. So,
Thank
that's
you.
a comment for me.
So question specifically on the bird application. What happens if someone takes a helmet selfie?
Okay,
Is there a benefit?
Had an issue there with the mute. So yeah, you can, if after you receive, you get incentivized deals as well. So you can get half off rides. You can get up to half off rides, and also we also can send you an additional helmet for free as well. So there's a bunch of different smaller sort of discount and promo codes that we send out on top of that, just encouraging people to use helmets.
Okay. And I noticed the plan has outreach events happening throughout this week, I think the 14th through the 18th, which would be this Friday. You mentioned you're coming for the special event on Friday. Have there been tables out handing out helmets this week?
There has not. I believe that is just, I think that was more so just focusing on, one, probably mistakenly saying that this format now was a form of engagement with the city, and then also the actual community engagement event on Friday.
You talked about the fining structure that you have in place, and I'm curious how long a fining structure has been in place with Bird.
That's something we can turn on whenever cities ask us to. So now under our new application, this is something that we've just recently turned on. So when students weren't there, we didn't have this turned on. So this is something that through conversations with Hank and staff and team, we've decided to turn on immediately now, since under the new program.
Okay, so prior to this, how has Bird worked to correct behavior for people who are not parking the scooters correctly or using scooters correctly? What has been the accountability structure up until this new fining mechanism?
Yep. So typically, so let's say an individual or rider was trying to end a trip and parked in a way that was not of protocol. They wouldn't be able to end the trip, right? So that's going to automatically flag for our operations and data team that this individual is not one that's compliant to the local rules and regs there. So one, you're being charged it could be an awful lot of money for your improperly parked vehicle, and also it flags it on our end as well to follow up with email messaging to let them know your ride in. This is basically the scorecard or report card of your ride and your trip, so that if that continues to happen, then obviously it can move swiftly to a terminated account. But now we have more of a structured system put in place with levels of fines as well for individuals who are not riding or parking correctly.
Has the system the prior system that you described, has that been in place in Bloomington up through this point?
Yes, the prior system, yes, ma'am.
And how often is that being used? How many citations or fines have you done in Bloomington that you're aware of?
I don't have that number on hand, but I can definitely get that number and follow up with you.
Okay. In terms of self-monitoring, what staff resources do you have dedicated, or have you had dedicated up till this point, to basically I guess for a better word, patrol the area, make sure that your scooters and motorbikes are being parked in appropriate manners, that we're not having ADA-related issues or sidewalk accessibility issues. Can you tell me about what your staff resources have been up to this point?
Yeah, of course. Up to this point, we've had 4 what we call fleet managers in the city of Bloomington. And those individuals are responsible for diagnostics, logistics, rebalancing, and just overall upkeep of the vehicles and ensuring that they're, responding in a quick amount of time with regards to any sort of 301 request or, again, improperly parked or tipped over vehicles.
What do they do? I hear you saying that among their job responsibilities is to respond to issues that are brought to their attention. What kind of proactive work do they do?
Much of that is in their app that we have specifically for our fleet managers. So it tells them when they should be rebalancing vehicles. But a lot of that is also left up to the local operations individual in terms of, where they best see placing vehicles, where they best see fit to place these vehicles that are obviously also within the rules and regs, of course. So with regards to how proactive they are, could you elaborate a bit more as to what you're looking for there? Are you saying with regards to maybe trying to ensure that, people aren't tipping vehicles over? What exactly are we trying to get to there?
Well, right now, the city, Mr. Wason discussed the fact that the city is putting resources toward having city employees be out on the streets to monitor whether or not scooter users are complying with the rules that are required. And I'm wondering where your company is in doing that sort of work as well, seeing as they're your customers.
Yep. Yeah. So I'd say that a lot of that responsibility is indeed on our fleet managers to ensure that vehicles are properly parked. Vehicles are in places where they're, compliantly parked in zones where they're supposed to be. They're not in ADA areas and things of that nature. So, like I said, we have 4. We've operated with 4 fleet managers at the moment to ensure that that standard is kept with. But I'll definitely say this: given some of the new regulations within this program, I think that you'll see a lot more of our local operations teams just around the city, just ensuring that our vehicles are in the right place and parked according to the rules and regs, because the standard is higher. And if we want to continue to be able to, and we do want to continue to be in the city of Bloomington, we have to ensure that we meet that standard or are exceeding the standard of which you guys have set for us. So you'll definitely be seeing more of our local operations teams, and again, have the opportunity to meet them as that scheduling comes up. I believe I heard next week.
So if I could follow up on this, this is Adam Wason, and so in a scenario where one of your fleet managers is out and they clearly recognize that they're setting up the pods of the devices, and as they're headed from one location to another, they see a bird scooter on a sidewalk blocking the sidewalk. Are they going to quickly stop a vehicle, find a parking place, and go and clear that obstruction?
Yes, that is what is expected. Okay. That is correct.
Yep. And then just to kind of
and again, that's in their. I'm sorry, but that's in their app as well. So they would see that and plan their sort of strategy for the day to rebalance by what they're seeing within that app. So, they would more than likely see that vehicle. That's as they drive by, it should already be within their app to be able to have them come and rebalance.
And so to follow up there, does the technology within your app, so my understanding is that a rider wants to end their ride, they're going to have to take a picture and submit that and show you how it's parked. Is there features within the app, or is there monitoring of those pictures that would, if a micromobility device is not parked properly per your standards and that's pictures submitted, would that be flagged so that the ride cannot end, or would the ride be allowed to be ended and then it would just be expected that staff, when they rebalance, would take care of that obstruction?
So now we're getting into some gray there. So because obviously, you know, a vehicle could be properly parked and someone else could come by and knock it over, right? So
Sure.
so then you don't want to, you know, blame the individual who did properly park, who followed the rules, but then someone else came along and knocked it over. But we do have something for a feature for that. It's called tip alert. So our operations team would then get a alert when a vehicle has been improperly pushed or tipped over.
So I'm thinking more of an actual so on a sidewalk where, you know, the device is parked in such a way that maybe up to 2/3 of the sidewalk is blocked. Would anything within
Those are
the app,
flagged.
how would that be addressed?
Yeah, those are typically flagged. So one, you wouldn't be able to end the trip. So you wouldn't be able to end the trip if you're, you know, let's say your vehicle is parked in the middle of the street, not the street, I'm sorry, in the middle of the sidewalk. You wouldn't be able to end your trip there because that wouldn't be ADA compliant. But if in fact somehow you were able to end that trip, it is flagged. We do have a system internally that sifts through thousands and thousands of photos and is flagged for additional follow-up, with either that being some form of educational engagement or a finding or warning.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on this application? A quick refresher on the license. I know there are a lot of stipulation language in the license for requirements for operators, and if they're not fulfilled, the city can revoke the license. There is somewhat of a distinction made in the license language that says, in the event that repeated parking violations result in an excessive number of impoundments of the operator's scooters by the city in any calendar month, the city may order a reduction in the number of standing scooters allowed under this license. The determination of what constitutes an excessive number of impoundments is made at the sole discretion of the city. The operator may petition the city for a review of the number of allowed scooters after 30 days have elapsed from the date of an order of reduction. So my question is it at the determination of the city the amount of reduction? So can we reduce all standing scooters in a situation where we feel that the violations have become so problematic?
Yeah. I think if we wanted to do any type of full revocation, we would definitely be coming to the board. If it was a determination of the staff, we would be doing that internally as a group. You know, if we were seeing excessive violations of the licensing agreement with parking and such for a specific scooter company and type of scooter, and say they had 200 in their fleet right now, and we found it to be excessive in a given month. I think we would internally strategize, is this excessive to the point of a 50% reduction of, but I think that would be kind of an open conversation. I think the next couple months are going to be a really good learning experience for both the staff and the companies, you know, to really kind of see how it goes with these new measures in place. And then, you know, if in the first month we see, say, 75 violations by one company, is that excessive in the first month? I think we would give it basically, I'm looking at this fall again as kind of an extension of a pilot period of new regulations in place to see how the changes in the language of the application or of the licensing impacts what we're seeing on the streets. But that would be a kind of a group decision amongst the staff and in coordination with city legal and others. But I think we would kind of look for that time period first to really review the data.
We're just pausing for a moment. Thanks. Any other questions on this license? Or comments from the board?
I do have comments, and I'll put them in here. They're not specific to Bird, but they apply across the board to all three companies who are before us this evening. I really appreciate the work that the city has done, and particularly the Public Works Department, to address issues that have been consistent over the last 4 years with these scooters. I think that the things that the city is putting in place do have the opportunity to make a difference going forward in how scooter parking, and particularly parking in the way that obstructs the right-of-way and accessible ramps, the opportunity to change that. I appreciate the fact that the Public Works Department has gone to the length of getting additional budgetary funding to do enforcement on this. But I'm also extremely frustrated that it has come to this, that these expenditures are on the city and on the taxpayers to hold companies accountable to follow through on making sure that their customers are using their product appropriately. The things that we've discussed in the conversation with Bird, and which I expect are consistent across the three companies, are that the company has the ability to know who their customer is, to find their customer for inappropriate use or parking of the equipment, and has staff that can patrol to make sure that there are not parking issues and accessibility issues. But despite those things, we have gone through a 4-year period with these scooters in which the problems we have keep coming up again and again and again. And each time that these permits have come up for renewal, the expectation and our expectations are that the scooter companies are going to comply with the requirements of their permits. And we get assurances that that's going to happen. But as we go forward, nothing changes. The very nature of this business, of this concession, is that it relies upon the use of our right-of-way in order for the business to exist. And I would think that if that's the case, a cost of doing business that should be built into the business structure is to make sure that they are using our right-of-way and that our customers are using the right-of-way in a way that respects the right-of-way and respects its purpose for the citizens of our community. And the citizens who are getting the most use from the scooters tend to skew toward younger customers and fully abled customers. And the citizens who are being hindered by this tend to skew towards older citizens and people who are not fully abled. And there seems to be something inherently unfair about that. And we have had discussions over and over, and I mentioned this at the work session yesterday, about what it is that the city can do to hold the scooter companies accountable and so that they will in turn hold their customers accountable for the use of the equipment in the right-of-way. And why are we having to find so many ways to make that happen? One of the ways that we hold the companies accountable is whether or not we renew their permit. And I've watched this go through for 4 years, and I appreciate that there are things on the horizon that can make it better. But I'm very frustrated that for the last 4 years, all of the mechanisms that we are offering up have been in place, and they have not made a difference to these companies. So with that being said, I don't support the renewals. And again, this is not specific to Bird, it's across the board for all 3 companies.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
Good evening, board members. Dave Askins with the B Square Bulletin. Like board member Lloyd, my questions relate to all of the license applications, not just to Bird, in case Bird is wondering why they're being subjected to this extra scrutiny. These are general questions about all the licenses. First of all, I hope that some clarity can be given about where we sit with respect to the process. So tonight, as I understand it, a license is being approved or could be approved for each of the companies. Is there another step where a contract is then approved by the board, or is the contract left to be worked out by the administration between each scooter company based on the fact that you have approved a license? A related question, the current cost of a license, as I understand it, is $10,000, and then there's a per ride payment that the companies make based on usage. Where does that live? Is that in the license agreement, or is that in city code? I don't think it's in city code. I think it's in the license agreement, but I'm not sure. But it would be useful, I think, for everyone to have some clarity about where that actually lives. Question about the need to revise city code to make all this happen. The answer to the question of why hasn't there been enforcement by the city, at one point, from Alex Crowley, former director of Economic and Sustainable Development, his understanding, and I know that I reported his understanding correctly and accurately, his understanding was a change to city code was required in order for the city to impose a fine on a scooter company as opposed to an individual who parked incorrectly. So the plan all along back in 2019, as described by City Attorney Mike Rooker in his comments to the City Council, was the city would be fining the scooter companies, and they could choose to pass that fine along to their users as they saw fit, but the city couldn't do that because they didn't have the user information, and that was intentionally that way. The city didn't want the individual user information. So it was left to the scooter companies to pass along the fines that the city was going to impose on the scooter companies. But the city never did that. So what I've been trying to figure out for the last 2 years is why hasn't the city imposed a fine? And Mr. Crowley's explanation, I mean, that adds up. I mean, if the city actually had, it turns out, no legal ability to impose that fine, well, then it's understandable that they would not try to do it. But if now, in the future, our plan is to fine the scooter companies, then Mr. Crowley's understanding must not have been accurate. So I think some clarity on that specific point is in order. The other change in the city code that I think just has to be done is to refine the definition of a motorized scooter so that the sittable vehicles are included. Right now, anything with a seat is excluded from the definition of a motorized scooter. It's spelled out in city code. A bicycle, whether it's motorized or not, is explicitly excluded from the definition. So the idea, I mean, I don't understand how it works legally, that we're issuing licenses for companies to have their vehicles in the public right-of-way, and these vehicles are supposed to be regulated by city code, but a certain percent of their fleet is excluded from the regulation by city code. So I wonder what happens when, I'm probably out of time by now, I'm sure. I'll wrap up. You can imagine, though, that a scooter company like Lime that has the bikes, a bike is improperly parked, and the city comes and they fine the company because of the illegally parked bicycle. Why couldn't they say, well, look, your city code doesn't even apply to this? I mean, not that they would. My guess is they would say, well, shoot, we'll eat that, whatever the fine is. I think it's $15. Anyway, that's a bunch of questions, and I'm not sure if they can all be answered tonight. There's certainly no legal requirement that you answer questions from the public mic. I understand that. That's fine. But I think that those questions need to be asked in public, and that's why I asked them. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate the questions. I'll defer to city colleagues for some of the context or the answers to some of those questions. My understanding is that the license itself is the agreement with the scooter company, that is where it is enumerated, the fee that they pay and all of the details of the license.
I got an affirmative from City Legal on that, yes.
Okay, great. As for some of the other questions, I think if we have information on any of the other questions, be good.
So I'll just, everything I understand is we have the ability to find and impound, and that exists in the current language. And I'm looking back to City Legal for some help here, but that's been my understanding, and that's why we're proposing what we are.
Sure. Michael Rooker, City Attorney for the city. I'm not sure. That's a question I would want to take upstairs and talk to some other folks about. I don't know that I can give the board firm advice on some of the questions that were asked. And I'm not sure which question you're talking about. It might be helpful to go back through them as well, but I can.
I think, and I was looking back at the license while we were talking about the questions. The question is, does the city ordinance allow for the city to assess a fee to the scooter companies themselves, as opposed to it being some sort of like user fine that gets sort of translated and passed on to the individual user? I hope I'm characterizing that question properly. That there was some question about whether the city could actually impose a fine on the scooter companies as opposed to the end user. And because of that separation of information, of end user information from the city, there seemed to be a gray area there. I'm looking at item N on the license, and it says, any scooter that poses a hazard to public health and safety may be immediately removed and impounded by the city. The city may dispose of any scooter that has been impounded and stored by the city for a period of 180 days or more. 180 or more days. Removal, impoundment, storage, and disposal of a shared use motorized scooter shall be a Class E traffic violation and subject to the operator to penalties set forth in BMC 15.64.010E. So there it seems to spell out that we are able to fine the operators directly for impoundment. I'm not sure if I see the user, the individual improper parking in the license.
So here's what I can tell you. I think, not sure the precise nature of all the questions that we have. What I do know is that since this board looked at, and I'm going to get the dates wrong, Hank may be able to remind me, or you guys may be able to remind me,
Application hearings were in July.
there were some generalized changes suggested by this board or brought to this board that were made to scooters in the, I want to say, late winter, early spring, something around then. There have been some discussions about potentially altering the municipal code in response to some of those suggestions. I don't have a sense. I can't tell you precisely what those are. I don't know if anybody else at the hearing can, but I don't know that we know even necessarily what those would be. So to the extent you're asking whether or not there are going to be subsequent changes to municipal code, I think that will be decided at a later date. So.
I'm glad that you mentioned it's the shared micro-mobility directives, which was a resolution that the board passed, because in that it says, once the city and operators take measures to promote appropriate parking, which we can say have been done, the appropriate measures have been done, operators with vehicles outside the designated parking area may be fined. It doesn't specify exactly the fine amount or the specific, area in the ordinance that would refer back to the fine, but it does say that the operators may be fined in that. So I'm operating under the assumption that that is something that the city can enforce.
I agree to that, but we'll definitely confirm that with city legal and others.
I have Beth Kate on Zoom, and I think she wants to make a comment.
Okay, great.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I was actually just going to point out the section that President Decker just referred to with respect to the fines. And the code does also right now include a catch-all provision that talks about if there are any other violations. It leads you back to our standard fining provisions in the code. Yes, I think just to add on to what Mr. Rooker said, I mean, we are discussing a bunch of potential code changes that would kind of clean up, if you will, the scooters, the bikes, we're talking about that right now. They kind of bring the code to where we are at currently, and so we'll be having further conversations about that. But my immediate hand raise was about the section that actually we just read out. So
Thank you, Beth.
that's all I have.
All right, other questions? Any other public comment? Do we have anything in Zoom, chat, or raised hand?
Jim Shelton kind of raised his hand earlier, and I'm not certain if he wants to make a comment.
Mr. Shelton, would you like to make a comment?
I'm seeing no response. No.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion for scooter license application for Bird Rides, Inc.?
I move that we approve the scooter license application for Bird Rides, Inc.
I second that motion. Thanks. So we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
No.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is scooter license application for Neutron Holdings, Inc., DBA Lime.
All right, I'll start with all the comments I did earlier, and no, I'm not going to offer any further comments. I think we've had a good, robust discussion. I would ask that do we have a representative from Lyme on the meeting?
Representative Hank. I'm sorry? I do not have a representative. No.
Okay. It appears we do not have a representative of Lyme on the call. I would ask that the board go to the next agenda item, and Hank, could you see if you could call any of your Lyme reps and see if you can get them on the meeting to answer the questions that we posed today? Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is scooter license application for VO Ride, Inc.
All right, Adam Wason again, and I know we have a representative of VO here. I won't offer any other comments. I'd just ask that if you could take time to address the questions that were sent via email today and offer your comments, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi again. It's good to be back. My name is Olivia Ortega. I am the Manager of Partnerships and Policy for VO for the Midwest region. So as was covered earlier, this past spring, we worked with several folks within the city, the Department of Public Works, Economic and Sustainable Development folks, as well as they were forming their recommendations for the scooter and e-bike program moving forward here in Bloomington. And I think, as was mentioned earlier as well, we stood behind that because we fully believe that the new program regulations will make a noticeable difference and will help alleviate many of the concerns about the program that currently exists within the community. VO is more than committed to a long-term partnership with Bloomington. We'd really like to be here for the long haul. We've been here since 2021. And as part of that, we want to continue to build a scooter program that works for folks, whether they're riders or whether they're pedestrians or visitors to the city as well. So it's really exciting to see that the new parking corrals are being installed downtown. From our perspective, we definitely don't want the work to stop there in terms of addressing some of the parking issues that have been brought up. We would like to continue to find parking solutions, particularly for outer neighborhoods or residential streets, where scooters are oftentimes blocking sidewalks and accessibility can become a real issue for residents in those areas. So like I mentioned, I think that the downtown parking corrals will go really, really far in helping alleviate any issues in that area. But I think the next step is for us to turn our focus to those outer areas. I know internally and operationally, we will be setting our focus, and the technicians actually patrolling will be able to devote more time to those areas now that there's required parking or forced parking in the downtown space. So yes, much of yesterday's discussion at the work session focused on the need for greater accountability, and earlier this evening as well, and the implementation of processes that keep Bloomington sidewalks clear of scooters and e-bikes and really prioritize accessibility. I think one other solution that we wanted to bring forth here and that we haven't started engaging with the city on yet is integrating our reporting mechanism for improperly parked vehicles into the city's U-Report system. So this is something that VO has partnered with other cities to do. Most recently, probably Los Angeles, we worked with them to integrate it into their 311 reporting system. So essentially, it makes it easier for residents to actually go on and report if there's an issue with a scooter blocking a sidewalk, something like that. But it also gets the issue over to our technicians quicker. So that is something we would be very interested in working with folks here to do. And then when it comes to more proactive enforcement, I mentioned yesterday we do implement fines here, and I have numbers as well. I actually sent an attachment with responses that were more detailed to some of the concerns that came up during yesterday's work session. So I sent it over to Hank earlier, and we'll make sure you guys get a copy if you haven't received it yet. But those have those numbers as well. I think so far we've put out 112 this year, and last year we had over 300 that we gave out. I also wanted to quickly speak to the question earlier around fines being issued directly to the companies. So I don't have any insights on the city's ability to do that or not, but I will say that IU Bloomington does that with the companies directly. So that's the process that works, and it really sort of has influenced our relationship with the university in that we're implementing forced parking proactively on campus because of the fines that are in place whenever they impound a vehicle. A couple other things to highlight from the document that I sent over. It was kind of in depth, so I'm not going to read from it. But I did just want to mention that our rider education and outreach efforts in 2023 and 2024 are specifically going to focus on ensuring that riders are using scooters and e-bikes in a way that doesn't inhibit pedestrians, especially when they're parking their vehicles, and bringing accessibility to the forefront. It's something we've started to do in other markets, including holding stakeholder sessions with disabled folks in markets like Seattle to hear perspectives on how we can find solutions. And we really want micromobility to be successful. I think that the city of Bloomington has gone the distance in terms of pushing for infrastructure that makes it a much more feasible way for folks to get around. And I think internally as a company, we are going to prioritize the accessibility piece in our outreach and education, in addition to being ready to tackle other solutions in our operations, like with parking corrals or with integrating into the city's 311 system, things like that, to make sure that we go beyond the downtown sphere to do that. So the only other thing I'll mention is that I included the contact information for our local operations team in that document. I think that the folks here have it. Hank, God bless him, meets with us biweekly, and we are always happy to pull additional folks in the city into those conversations. Ideally, we would be able to hear from folks from the police department and other departments that have different insights on what they're seeing on the streets, so that we can continue to tweak our operations to target issues as they arise. But yeah, that regular touch point is in place, and we look forward to expanding that. I think overall we want to be able to continue our program in Bloomington and continue to build on the program policies that work here, and to capitalize on the work that the city's done in reforming their policies. And I think that we stand ready to partner with them on different types of solutions that'll help create the program that riders want to see, that pedestrians are good with being in their community, whether it's someone that's walking, or whether it's a visitor to Bloomington or anything like that. So I will leave it there, but I do want to make sure that you all receive a copy of the responses that I sent over.
That's in your inbox.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a few comments real quick? I just want to thank the VO team and Olivia for not only being here in person and present, but also with their interactions with city staff. They've been very proactive, and even their, do you call them fleet managers as well?
We are operations managers and technicians. Yeah.
I personally encounter their staff on a regular basis, correcting issues. They've been very responsive. The gentleman that sets up their pods in the different locations was very proactive as soon as we started putting in our corrals of making sure to be using them. So I do want to thank the VO team for their responsiveness. I think it kind of is setting the bar.
Thank you. Questions for the VO license?
I don't have a question. I would like to make a comment in line with Adam's, that in my time on the board, I have found that VO's representation, particularly you, Olivia, has been the most communicative, engaged with the board, proactive, collaborative, and working towards what I do feel is a shared solution to making this work in our community. So I agree with Adam that I think that your company has definitely set the bar for how we would like to work with the shared
Mobility.
micro-mobility devices in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I will say we share Bloomington as sort of a success story in other contexts because of the partnership we were able to have and like the deep level of transparency we were able to have when they were formulating their recommendations for a reformed program. So there was like a real level of transparency there that we haven't necessarily seen in other places, and it was great to be able to have that back and forth with the city as they figured out what's going to work best for them and how we can fit into that as a company.
Question about the events, I see, because it is Welcome Week, and you do also have noted the Friday event that's happening.
Yeah, we will be there on Friday.
campus. Are you doing other events this week?
Yeah, we're going to be at the People's Park tomorrow. We'll have folks doing like ride demonstrations and handing out swag and educational material as well. They have like a concert series throughout the summer, so we're going to hit one of the final concerts that they're hosting there.
And does VIO offer a discount to riders that demonstrate that they are using helmets?
Helmets, we don't have anything in place for that right now. I think it's probably something that I definitely think it's something that we're interested in. We offer discount programs and incentives for folks that park correctly, like $1 off their ride or something like that. The helmet piece, we don't currently utilize like selfie technology or anything like that to check in with folks and actually verify if they're wearing the helmets. It's been spotty in the past, and so I think we went back to the drawing board on that piece, but definitely something that we want to continue to discuss internally about how we could do things like that.
And is it evident on the app how a user can request a free helmet? Like, is that where they might place a request for a helmet, or how does a user come about getting a free helmet?
So they can go through our customer support. If anyone is on the line with our customer support team, which I gotta say, like, they're really great, and you can call them up and like they'll always answer. They're really patient people, but they'll help get a free helmet over to someone if they request it via phone. In addition, our webpage that's devoted to Bloomington and the like specific local regulations here has details on how folks can get one either dropped off to them or go pick one up at the warehouse. It's also something that piece of information we try to disseminate when we're out and about doing outreach with folks at different events.
Thank you. And last question from me. VIO, I know, has the seated scooter. Are there any shared e-bikes from VIO yet?
So we currently, our fleet is the standing scooter and the seated scooter here. We have a model of our Cosmo. It's called the Cosmo E, and it's an e-bike. And it looks very similar to our seated scooter, but it obviously has pedals. It's not something that we currently have in Bloomington, but I think we're open to conversations, especially given that the city has continued to prioritize e-bikes being, a slightly more active form of transportation and other implications around safety and that sort of thing. I think it's something that we'd want to engage with them in conversations about incorporating it into our fleet in the future.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any public comments?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Dave Askins with the B-Square Bulletin. Same questions as before. I'm going to enumerate them so that everybody can keep track. And apologies to Olivia, I'm going to use VIO Ride as the example just because this is the item for VIO Ride. Question 1. If an e-scooter from VIO Ride is sitting in the middle of an ADA ramp in clear violation of the ordinance on where scooters are allowed to be parked, does the city have the legal authority under code to impose a fine for that specific instance of a violation on the scooter company? That's question 1. It's a yes, no question. Follow-up question, question number 2. If the answer to question 1 is yes, then why hasn't the city done so in the course of 4 years? I know that Board Member Lloyd is frustrated with the scooter companies. My frustration is with the city. I live downtown. It's not an exaggeration to say I have moved over 1,000 scooters out of the sidewalks or sidewalk ramps. Just in the course of my daily travels, I don't go out in order to do that chore, just as I'm moving through the downtown. So that's the reason I really want to get the answer to these questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any answers from staff?
Not at this time.
I will say from my perspective on the board, according to the language in the license, we do have the right to impose the fine on the operator for the specific scenario described, because we would impound it.
I agree with that.
Okay, all right, because that's what I'm hoping to see if we do have a violation. Of course, I would love a world where there were no violations, but knowing that that's probably not gonna happen, if there is a scooter in the ramp or in some other egregious location that is blocking the right-of-way, as we've had lots of conversation about the importance of the right-of-way, then I would expect that that would be impounded and that we would subsequently issue the fine.
Can I also assume, Adam, with what you spoke about earlier with the increase in budget to parking enforcement and the parking enforcement team in general being able to do things such as what my colleague suggested, that that will happen?
That is absolutely our plan. And I do want to clarify that that the adding of the staff is that staff member being added is intended to be paid for through the fees from the companies. It's not. I'm hoping that all of the fees. So the fees up until now have been being used are being used for the corral installations, the materials, the labor for that. And such. Going forward, it's my expectation and what I've requested of the administration and the budget team is that this additional parking enforcement position be funded with the revenues directly received from the scooter companies for the licensing fees and the per ride costs. If we issue a fine, that revenue will more than likely go directly to the general fund, as that's the way fines work. But it's the intent to use those revenues to pay for the position. And yes, that is the intent. We will be confirming with city legal and others to make sure, but absolutely I agree with Board President Cox Decker that the language in the application is pretty clear to me. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions? Any other public comment? All right, thank you. Is there a motion on the license application for VO Ride?
I move that we approve the scooter license application for VO Ride, Inc.
And I second that motion. We have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Crone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
No.
Cox Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. If we do not have representation from Lime,
Yes, I'm going to ask one more time on the Zoom meeting. Do we have a representative of Lime that could address the board's questions or the staff's questions that were sent?
We do not have a representative.
okay.
I would
I'm
ask
gonna-
that you would continue that to a subsequent meeting, and at this time, we would not ask that you would take any action on their license application without a representative here to answer their questions.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a motion that we table that item for a future meeting. This is for scooter license application for Neutron Holdings, Inc., DBA Lime. Is there a second? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
No.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Motion to table passes. How are we doing?
Great.
It's checking in. Okay.
I did, as you saw, I did ask engineering staff I'm going to be able to handle all their items this evening,
Okay.
so that is no problem on my end. Let me get back to an agenda to figure out where I'm at.
That's fine. I'll give you a second to get back to that. That's what I wanted to check on. I figured we had a little transition here.
Are we done? I'm sorry? Are you done? Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. No problem. No. So preliminary engineering contract with Eagle Ridge. This is going to be part of 3.
Yeah, we're just going to take a second here to get adjusted because we're in a couple different packets.
All right. So this project will improve pedestrian safety and accessibility by reconstructing sidewalk curb ramps in the downtown area. Specific locations will be prioritized by the Planning and Transportation Department. Both design and construction will be partially funded with federal funds. Eagle Ridge was selected from 3 engineering firms that responded to the RFP to perform preliminary engineering services for the project. The total contract amount is set to not exceed the amount of $135,258. Construction of the project is anticipated for 2028. I'll also just note that Neil Copper, city engineer, was senior project engineer with the city, informed the board yesterday that Eagle Ridge has actually been acquired by another engineering firm, and that contract will be executed in that regard. So we would ask for your approval of this item.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the preliminary engineering contract with Eagle Ridge Civil Engineering for downtown curb ramps, Phase 4.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is change order number 1 for the Allen Street Greenway project.
Yep, Adam Wason again. So this is near the address of 716 West 11th. As part of the project in this area, a stormwater inlet was removed for a rain garden that was to be constructed. When that was removed, there was a hole in the stormwater pipe underneath, and it was not known prior to the contract being awarded. E&B Paving was on site constructing the rain garden and repaired the hole in the stormwater pipe at a cost of $1,833.98. We ask for your approval of that change order.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
None.
Any public comment on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 1 for the Allen Street Greenway project.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is change order number 2 for the East Winslow Road resurfacing project.
Again, Adam Wason. As I mentioned yesterday, this was a little bit of a heartbreaker. We had brand new fresh pavement down on the 200 block of East Winslow Road on July 13th when a water main break occurred underneath the road. Milestone contractors were on site repaving and making improvements to that area. Knowing that CBU was able to fix the water pipe underneath, and we had Milestone and their paving team in the area, we requested that they repair the road after the main break was repaired. This comes at a cost of $22,411.99. This will be a shared cost between the City of Bloomington Utilities and Public Works for that work.
Thank
We ask
you.
for your approval.
Questions on that item?
Nope.
Any public comment on that item?
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 2 for the East Winslow Road resurfacing project.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on East 2nd Street. This is August 31st, 2023 through October 1st of 2023.
Yes, again, Adam Wason. We've got several streetlights in the area that are beyond their useful life and require replacement of the poles and lighting. So this is for Duke Energy to have lane, sidewalk, and bike lane closures as part of those replacements. They'll be moving from light to light in this area between High Street and Roosevelt, and expect that it should be less than 30 days, but we've built in a little additional time for weather, possibilities of weather. And we request your approval.
All right, questions on this item?
I'm sorry to prolong this, but because I had to leave the work session yesterday and I was not here for the discussion of this item, this is right in front of Rogers and Benford School, and I just wanted to know what was discussed about accessibility to the school, particularly at drop-off and pickup times.
We've been having very extensive conversations with Duke Energy to make sure they're working with MCCSC Transportation and both of the schools there and their administrators at the school. They're for anyone that's experienced pickup and drop-off time on East 2nd Street over there, it can be a little, a bit of a challenge. So yes, they're very well aware of the schools. Yes, they're very well aware of the fact that they need to coordinate with not only transportation, but the actual schools themselves. So I can assure you that will occur before this work commences.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, any public comment on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on East 2nd Street from August 31, 2023 to October 1, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on West 13th Street. This is August 31st, 2023 through October 1st of 2023.
Again, this is street lighting replacement in the area of West 13th Street between North Illinois and North Summit Streets. And very similar, we're replacing outdated equipment in the area. Same time frame as the other project. I think they'll be using some of the same crews for both. And so 30-day closure with some additional time added for weather delays. Request for your approval.
Thank you. And we did talk about schools related to this item yesterday, too, just with pedestrian travel and other travel in the area as well. Any questions on?
I'll just make a general comment on that.
Sure.
We're doing a monthly coordination meeting between Duke Energy, City of Bloomington Utilities, Monroe County Government, and all those entities on a monthly basis. So I can say that although there have been some hiccups in some of the communications of late with some of the transmission line project, we do have very good avenues of communication with them. So as issues arise, if the school were to bring up an issue, we would have those contacts and have that ability to communicate issues quickly.
Thank you. All right, any public comments on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on West 13th Street from August 31, 2023 to October 1, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next, we have lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on West Allen and South Madison Streets. This is September 4th through the 15th of 2023.
So this is street lighting replacement again on West Allen from on West Allen near South Madison Street, and this will actually, we're hopeful this will start up in early September and take less than 15 days.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
None.
Any public comment on this item?
I see nothing on Zoom.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy on West Allen and South Madison Streets from September 4th to 15th, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is lane and sidewalk closure request from AEG.
All right, so this is a request from AEG for lane and sidewalk closures as part of their work with the fiber installation project. We've got areas on North Lincoln Street, West Smith Avenue, West Dixie Street that are all included in this request. Continuing to work very closely with AEG on a daily basis with any of the issues that arise with the project, and we request your approval.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
None.
This was, just to recap quickly, work session conversation about this item. I had asked if the same crew moves through the area, just because pedestrian travel in that particular area that they're requesting will be, high at this point in the year.
Yep.
And we were discussing the fact that generally it's one crew that's moving through, so we don't have multiple places where there are right-of-way areas affected. It's typically moving throughout, which I think helps in addressing some of those obstructions. Any public comment on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve lane and sidewalk closure request from AEG.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is road closure request from Miller Pipeline at First and Rogers. This is August 21st through the 25th of 2023.
All right, Miller Pipeline, on behalf of CenterPoint, is requesting this road closure, and it's for a gas line relocation and improvement project that's associated with the West First Street portion of the Hopewell projects. The road will be closed primarily on West First side of the intersection and will last for 4 days before transitioning into lane restrictions for the rest of the duration of the project. It's expected to start August 21st and last for 6 weeks. Working closely with Bloomington Transit and other local property owners on access and routes. I know there were some questions about one of the particular property owners on West First Street, and I got confirmation from the project manager that they're working on access from a couple different areas, and we'll continue to work with that property owner.
Okay. Thank you. Questions on this item?
No. Just a question, because we're being asked to approve this. It says August 21 to 25, which is 4 days as opposed to 6 weeks. That's mentioned in the staff report.
So this is the closure. The closure is expected to last 4 days, and then they'll do lane restrictions for the rest of the period.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Any public comment on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the road closure request from Miller Pipeline at First and Rogers from August 21 to 25, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is lane and sidewalk closure request from Sheil Sexton on East 7th and Pete Ellis Drive. This is August 28th through 30th of 2023.
Yes, so this is the project that's located near 7th and Longview. It's new construction for the Curry Urban Apartment Complex. And so this is a request for lane and sidewalk closures at the end of August here, and it's for the replacement of sidewalk and curb restoration and repaving of 7th Street. And we request your approval.
Questions on this item?
No.
Any public comment on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from Sheil Sexton on East 7th and Pete Ellis Drive from August 28th to 30th, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next is acceptance of public improvements for Sudbury Parcel O, Summit Woods Phase 1, Sections 1 and 2.
All right, Adam Wason again, and so this is all related to the Sudbury Parcel O's Parcel O, Phase 1, Sections 1 and 2, the developments down there off of, on the southwest side of the community near Sudbury parcels, near the Sudbury properties. So this is accepting phase. Actually, I'm just going to read the last paragraph of the staff report because all of the other 3 paragraphs are really pretty specific. Basically, we're asking the board to accept the public improvements associated with Phase 1, Sections 1 and 2. This is sidewalks, street trees, streets, et cetera. It also authorizes the staff to release the performance bonds after the final acceptance, and then there will be a maintenance bond that's kept in place for a period of time in case there are any issues that do arise. So asking for your acceptance of the public improvements for Sudbury Parcel O, Phase 1, Sections 1 and 2.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
No.
Any public comment on this item? And I feel like I haven't said this in a while, but if you are on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, you can use raised hand or chat. I'm not sure if we have anyone on Zoom still, but want to make sure people know how to interact.
There is no comment on Zoom.
All right. Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we accept the public improvements for Sudbury Parcel O, Summit Woods Phase 1, Sections 1 and 2.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. Next up is contract with Incris LLC for exterior painting project at City Hall.
All right, so we've got exterior awnings, railings, and bollard lights at City Hall that are in need of a fresh coat of paint. We asked for 3 quotes on the project and received 2 back. Incris LLC was the low quote at $9,687.20, and we request your approval.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
Just to note that I will be recusing myself from both this and the next item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item?
No comment on Zoom.
Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the contract with Incris LLC for exterior painting project at City Hall.
All right, and I second. We have a motion and a second, so I will call the roll. Carone has recused. Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is contract with Incris LLC for sanitation garage repairs.
Yes, so this is a request for a project in the amount of $63,328 for exterior repairs to the sanitation garage on South Walnut Street. We held a pre-mandatory meeting, had 3 bids that we received for the project, and with some alternative pricing. It was determined that Incris was the most responsive and lowest bidder at the amount of $63,328, and we request your approval.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Any public comments on this item?
There is nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the contract with Incris LLC for sanitation garage repairs.
And I second. We have a motion and a second, so I will call the roll. Carone has recused. Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is staff reports and other business, and first under that is update on lane closures from Landmark Construction on North Walnut Street.
All right. So this is an ongoing project that we've been working very closely with Landmark Construction on for tie-ins with some of their water main and stormwater improvements. So there were some unforeseen changes with the stormwater infrastructure, and they were not able to get the work fully completed by August 11th. We had asked that they take a pause on that, and so now this is a request to complete the work between August 21st, 2023 and August 25th, 2023, and it will require some lane restrictions on the east side of North Walnut Street from East 15th to East 17th with an and they'll use their previously approved maintenance of traffic plan. We request your approval.
Is there, let's see. So with a request for approval, our motion is approving lane closures on North Walnut from Landmark Construction. That's the request. Okay, do we have a motion on that?
I move that we approve the lane closure request on North Walnut.
And the dates, maybe we can
Sorry.
work that in. Sorry, I've
Yep.
lost track of the dates now.
August, I just had it.
It's August 21st through August 25th, correct?
It is August 21st through August 21st, 2023 through August 25th, 2023 is the
Okay.
period of time now.
So I move that we approve the lane closure requests from Landmark Construction on North Walnut from August 21, 2023 to August 25, 2023.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Caron?
Aye.
Lloyd?
Aye.
Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up, any other staff reports? Sorry, I almost
Yes, I do want to
ran right
offer a very quick staff report congratulating Herb Kinzer on his retirement. Herb was a long-standing city employee, started his employment in the early 70s with Parks and Recreation and has now retired from the street division of Public Works. For the last several years, he's been our paving supervisor, for lack of better terms, and just wanted to make a good note of the high quality of work that Herb always put in. He was the type of staff member you can only dream of having in terms of his willingness to do what it took to get jobs done. And I want to wish Herb the absolute best into his retirement and hope that his wife Denise gets to join him in that soon. So we wish you the best, Herb, and thank you for all of your years of service.
Thanks. All right, next up is approval of claims. Do we have any questions on claims from the board? Any public comment on claims? Seeing none. Is there a motion on claims?
I move that we approve claims tonight in the amount of $2,916,212.12.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Caron?
Aye.
Lloyd? Cox Deckard, aye. Motion passes. And if we have nothing else, then I will call for adjournment.